Hey, I'm Adam. I'm a coach and instructor for Worship Ministry School. And one of the things that I get to do as a coach and instructor is help students out. And more recently, I've been able to help students out in person, on site, with them at their churches. And I want to tell you the story of Keith from Community Fellowship Church in Arkansas, who I recently got to visit. We were able to accomplish a lot together, so I just wanted to share a little bit of that story with you guys. I had a blast helping them out. It was a really great trip, and part of that, or mostly because of that, is because they entered the Accelerator Pro program with a really great work ethic and humility and willingness to try new things. So because of all that and their focused work, we were able to do a ton. Even before I got there, Keith and I had gotten on Zoom calls and we were able to work through a lot of problems just virtually, which is what happens with most of our students. We can do everything or almost everything virtually, but when I get to be there in person, we really can go a lot further, a lot faster, and that's what we did on this 4-day trip. So day one, it was Thursday. We had rehearsal that night, so I had to make sure that we got all of the audio ready. I assessed the PA system, the loudspeakers. I was able to tune the system a little bit, but I made sure not to spend too much time on that because quickly I recognized that I can only get these speakers to sound so good, being the brand they were and the placement that they had. So what I did was took some measurements, and I recommended him chat with Michael Curtis, someone else that we've had on our channel previously. You can watch that video of him and I talking through what his specialty is and how he's able to make the most out of your sound system and loudspeakers by placing them in the right spot and pointing them in the right direction and having them the right volume tuned properly. So you can go watch that video, but all that said, I didn't spend too much time on the PA system because I knew I was only going to get so far with it the way that it was. But one thing that I've run across in most churches that I've helped out with audio is gain structure. So if you're familiar with gain structure, you have signal coming in and you set the gain a certain way so that it can be processed properly throughout the rest of its journey to the speakers. In this case, we had the amps set to a proper volume so that we could mix with the main fader of the console at Unity. And then in rehearsal, we set gain structure properly as well. We did some basic EQ and compression and reverb. And for this, we were using an X32 rack console with all external preamps. And because it was all external preamps, this allowed us to switch to the M32C that they had available to them. We still are using the X32 rack as a secondary mixer for extra inputs, but now they're able to use that M32C as the main mixer. We also set up playback with a Looptimus Plus pedal, and this allowed the worship team to have click and tracks as well as a count in and pads. And in the future, they're going to be using more tracks, but because this was the first time using it, I recommended just start with pads. If you're getting off the click, it won't be a big deal. There's not going to be any cues that are going to mess up the structure of the song, as they weren't familiar with it having just started. But day one was all about getting the PA system set up properly and getting ready for rehearsals. That also included tuning the drum kit. One of the things that I've done a lot as a drummer, recording engineer, touring audio engineer is tune drum kits. So I was able to walk into their space, see that needed some work, and get that done before we put new microphones on them. I've recommended the Audix drum kit, I've recommended the Shure kit, but in this case I recommended the SE Electronics kit, which I was really pleased with when I was able to not only set it up but mix it. I loved how the microphones have the XLR jack on the bottom so that the cable's not in the way. They just fit on the kit really well, and they sound great as well. So I was really happy with going with the SE Electronics drum kit. So day two, we dialed in the drum tones for the live stream that we recorded audio with the new microphones. A note on the drum microphones, we also found an XY microphone, so it has an XY pattern from the capsules, and so you can place it directly above the snare and not worry about getting the height of the microphones just right or worry about phase. We just had this one microphone. It was two microphones on in one in a way because it had the two capsules on it, and we were able to send that stereo microphone to the sound system as well as the live stream. And so when we recorded with that, we were able to make sure that everything was dialed in properly through their Ableton broadcast audio mix. We tweaked a little bit more of the live stream, and then we started setting up mixing station on the iPad that they were using for mixing front of house. As I said, this was an X32 rack, and then we switched to an M32 compact or M32C mixer, which is just a single unit rack mixer. So there's no physical faders. We're only using an iPad or computer to control the mixer. So being able to access the tap tempo all the time and all the right channels that we want to see on the surface is important. And we couldn't quite accomplish that with the standard app that comes from Behringer or Music Tribe. So what we did was use Mixing Station for the iPad, and that worked out really well, getting to just download a custom layout that someone had built for the X32 or M32. Just see everything that we need to and see all the layers without being held back by the limitations of the app that comes from Music Tribe or Behringer. Day 3 was probably one of my favorite days because we got to throw things away and organize stuff. So you're going to see a lot of B-roll in this section of the way that we were able to clean things up. We consolidated 3 racks of gear into one single rack and added the X32 back in that can be used for special events. We were able to do a lot of cable management. We cleaned a lot of things up, different closets. We threw away a lot of garbage. We were able to put things in bins. We printed fresh P16 labels. So for the in-ear monitors, for the musicians, they will have clear labels on there. We also labeled a lot of cables with the Brady BM21 Plus label maker, which is my favorite label maker. If you have a favorite label maker or tool that you like to organize stuff with, definitely let me know in the comments. I love learning about new tools and ways to organize stuff. We also had multiple iPads that had all of the apps. So each iPad had the Mixing Station app, each iPad had the Playback app and the front of house mixing. So we deleted the apps that were unnecessary for mixing front of house on one iPad, and we deleted the Playback app on another. So we were able to label both iPads and say this one is for mixing front of house, this one is for playback, and we didn't have confusion about which was for which, especially with Playback having the loop to miss connected to it and downloading and renting songs to it. We weren't going to make those purchases twice because we're using 2 different iPads. Day 4 was Sunday. We were ready to mix and do the live stream and take care of all that. My job was mixing front of house, though we had the other volunteers helping out with that as well. In the time that I had between sound check and first service, I was able to take room measurements, and we're going to send those over to Michael Curtis to build a design for moving the speakers to the proper spot. We did an adjustment on the live stream lower third lyrics. Before, it was very small with a almost transparent blue background. We made the font much larger. We were able to get rid of the box because we were able to put a outline outside the words, the thicker font. So it really made it easier for the people watching online to sing along and see the words for the live stream. We also adjusted the in-ear monitor inputs for the wireless people singing and having wireless in-ears. The inputs were cranked, so anytime the mix got too loud, it would clip and cause issues with them being able to hear things properly. So that's another gain stage issue. If you haven't heard me say it yet anywhere on this channel, that's where a lot of problems come from, is not properly gain staging. Even that can happen for in-ear monitoring. And as I was mixing for front of house on Sunday, there were a lot of singers on stage, and I was able to take a LA2A limiter emulation that comes with any Behringer or Midas console and put that on the vocal bus so that we could glue all of those vocals together and really make it sound nice and full and not like each individual background vocalist was poking out at certain points, but that it sounded like a unified harmony. A couple of the things that I did specifically for the mix, one of them was we had a second bass channel. So we had just a regular bass channel, and then we had a drive bass channel. And this is a pretty common practice, but you would have the same bass guitar input go to one channel for the low end, and then have a separate one go to another channel, and you can distort it and use that more for the high end of the bass guitar to have clarity, as well as hear it better on the live stream. You can really hear more note definition that way. That was one of the things that I adjusted on their mix. Another was adding drum reverb. There was previously no drum reverb on the mix, so we got that dialed in, as well as a limiter on the vocal bus. So there were a lot of vocals in the worship team, and especially on the morning that I mixed, and we took all of those vocals, put them into a vocal bus, and then inserted a limiter onto that bus so that we could really do some gluing of those signals together, making it sound really nice, not having any certain background vocalists pop out too much at any point, but just have it glued and sound really good together. So it sounded really full, like they were all singing together. So those are a few of my favorite things about doing the actual front of house mixing on Sunday. Of course, I was only there for 4 days. We didn't accomplish everything and fix it all, but we have some next steps that Keith is going to take. One of those is they have a bad lighting console. The lighting console itself is causing flickering, so they've got a show file that he already had started, and they're going to start using a different lighting software so that they don't have that problem anymore. While the M32C and the iPad is a great mixing solution for them right now, they continue to grow in their inputs, so I recommended that they might use a Behringer Wing in the future. They can continue to use the stage boxes that they already have, but just plug in the Wing up at front of house so they can consolidate to one mixing console instead of on those special event days need to take all of the inputs from the X32 rack and put it into the M32 console. They can just use a single console for all of their input needs, and it would also provide some better I/O, physical inputs and outputs at the tech booth for less complicated audio routing of getting things like audio to the broadcast mixing computer in the other room or the live stream computer at the tech booth. They would just have that mixing console upstairs in their tech booth that they can use for all of that physical analog audio routing. While I was there, another thing I noticed was they didn't really have an exact knowledge of who was going to be there on Sunday for the worship team, so I recommended that they use Planning Center so that they can schedule musicians and know exactly what the team is going to be on Sunday, as well as provide for them things like audio files and charts that they can prepare their teams and their musicians to be ready for Sunday, and just give them all the resources that they might need to be prepared. This team is already using ProPresenter, but one more thing I recommended that they might find useful is having a service timer so that on their live stream and in their screens in person, they can have a countdown timer so that everyone knows when service is about to start and be ready to worship together at a certain time. So let us know in the comments what's something that you've done recently, what's something that you're working on, or what's something that you hope to accomplish soon. It was just an absolute pleasure working with Keith and Glendale and the rest of the team at Community Fellowship Church in Arkansas. If you're interested in learning more about the Accelerator Pro program, you can find a link in the description below. You can chat with a team member from Churchfront. We'll find out, is this a good fit for you to be in the program so that you can keep growing yourself and your ministry. We'll see you next time.